it's time for the explainer tonight, and it's another record increase for fuel prices this month. The last such significant one in March this year, when petrol prices jumped by 12 shillings, but this is the highest in 10 years or so. For the next 30 days, petrol will retail at 134 shillings, diesel at 115, and kerosene at 105 shillings, 110. But let's break down these figures. Now, there are a few components to that final pump price. When the product arrives in the country, let's break those down now. So when the product arrives in the country, these are the respective costs for super petrol, diesel, and kerosene. At this point, it looks pretty affordable, right? Well, this point is the easy part. It is from here that the costs begin to add up. The distribution and storage costs include the pipeline cost from Mombasa to Nairobi at 2 shillings and 7 cents. Other components such as pipeline losses accounting for about 0.01 shillings, depot losses ranging from 26 cents to 55 cents, depending on the different products. And then you've got delivery within 40 kilometers of Nairobi. And then, of course, you've got the supplier's margin. That is, the oil marketing companies, the ones we know as the different companies operating filling stations, have their profit margins, which are set at 12 shillings and 39 for petrol and 12 shillings 36 for both diesel and kerosene. Now, it is this next component that sends the prices to a whole new level. That is the taxes. Now, there are about 9 taxes in total that are charged on petroleum products. These are excise duty, road maintenance levy, petroleum development levy, petroleum regulatory levy, railway development levy, anti-adulteration levy, the merchant shipping levy, import declaration fee, and finally value-added tax, which was previously suspended but reintroduced in September 2018. These taxes, as you can see here, are almost equal to the cost of the product itself, or what they call the landed cost. Now, those taxes were introduced by your representatives in Parliament, and they account for close to half of the cost of the final pump price. Now, here's where we need to separate the roles. Now, the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority is authorized by law in the Energy Act to regulate the prices based on a set formula. Now, it is Parliament that passes the taxes and the executive through the President that assents to that law. But I know you're wondering, how does this work in other countries? Let's take a look at other regions. For example, other countries in the region, like Tanzania, for example. Now, in Tanzania, their fuel prices are regulated too by a body that's known as the Energy and Water Utilities Regulatory Authority. It is an autonomous regulatory authority that sets the cap prices for petroleum prices as mandated by Tanzania's Petroleum Act of 2015, Section 66. Now, what they do is they set a cap, but they encourage the oil marketing companies to sell at a price that gives them a competitive advantage as long as they do not exceed the cap or that limit set. So if you take a look at their latest prices, look at this here. Petrol is 19.6 shillings cheaper than Kenya's. Diesel is close to 9 shillings cheaper in Tanzania than it is in Kenya. And kerosene is 7 shillings 60 cheaper in Tanzania than it is here. Now, what about Uganda? That is a different story altogether. There are no price regulations for petroleum products in that country. The market forces are the ones that drive the prices. And they have had a serious push to seek price controls like some of the countries in the region, like Kenya and Tanzania, for instance. In fact, in April this year, the fuel prices in Uganda went up twice in a span of 4 days, prompting calls for price controls. Now, as Parliament passed new taxes in Uganda in the budget for the current financial year, petrol stations, in fact, increased their prices even before the tax was actually introduced and applied to the industry. That new tax is an increase of about 100 Uganda shillings, which is about 3 shillings 20 Kenyan currency. Now, current prices, as you can see here, these are as of September 13th, 2021 in Uganda, so that their prices are not too far from ours, but that the price of petrol at about 1 shilling more than Kenya's cost, and diesel costing 5 shillings more in Uganda than it does here in Kenya. So you can see why they're asking for price controls so as to be in line with their counterparts across the region, including, by the way, a country like Rwanda, where price regulation for products is actually done by the Rwanda Utility Regulatory Authority. Now, back to Kenya. And the main question is, what is the way forward? How do we cushion the most vulnerable who depend on things like kerosene for lighting and cooking? Now, I want to show you this graph here, and this will show you the effect of that much talked about Petroleum Stabilization Fund. Let's pause here for a moment as we take a look at that increase in prices. As you can see, for about 3 months this year, that's June, July, August, the prices remained relatively stable because they did make use of that stabilization fund that was in place. However, Citizen TV did verify or was able to report the fact that this was not actually used in this month's regulation that you take a look at there. So, of course, many of the questions are the knock-on effects on other segments of the economy. Even the cost of power, the tokens that we buy will go up. Now, we're going to have a detailed discussion of this on News Gang that's coming up right after this news bulletin with some guest gangsters. That is economist Kwame Owino, as well as Dr. Alex Awiti, who's a governance expert. So you want to tune in for that. But for now, that's where we leave it for The Explainer tonight.